Hey everyone, it's Gabby
and Danny
and Manny,
and you're listening to Oye, Let's Talk.
So welcome back to the new year. It's 2021, but it still feels like 2020, y'all. I mean, seriously, did we time travel or did we get stuck in time? Because 3 major things have happened to this year already that give me mad 2020 vibes. And to kick us off, Manny, why don't you tell us what happened?
Well, guys, just 6 days into the new year, into 2021, into the glorious year everyone was looking so forward to put bad things behind. On January 6th, Congress actually convened, a joint session of Congress was convened to certify the presidential elections. And everything was going smoothly. Pair of senators and representatives had objected to Arizona's votes, and both chambers went their separate ways to discuss this objection. During this objection, I was actually watching live. All of a sudden, you see a flurry of people getting the vice president in the Senate chamber scrambling. And it was very weird because the anchors on the station I was watching, they're like, we don't have audio to this. We're trying to figure out what's happening. And in the moment, we didn't really understand the grandeur, the grand situation that was occurring outside of the Capitol building. And these rioters had been slowly inching their way towards the Capitol entrance through these thin security lines, which were later criticized by both sides of the aisle.
Can I just mention the fact that I was taking a nap during this point in time? So because I finished fairly early, I finished work around 1 p.m. or so. And so I was home, I had just eaten lunch. I was super tired, drained from the day. And I took a nap. I wake up to a mass amount of tweets and breaking news alerts and my mom saying, are you watching CNN? Are you watching NBC? What is going on? I'm so confused. The world, I think, was in a state of shock. I think the world was shocked because this had never happened before in the United States.
It definitely took a couple of days to really understand what had happened. And as the days went on, security was being questioned and protocols were being questioned. People in position of power, the capital city chief of police was, under fire. The sergeant of arms of both chambers were under fire. Mm-hmm. So the FBI has currently arrested over 100 people already, and that number continues to climb. Every day they make more arrests. I'm sure you guys have seen videos of people literally getting off their planes, and there are federal agents outside in the terminal waiting to arrest people. Mm-hmm. So the FBI has come out to say that there are cameras all over the Capitol, and if you were inside, that they were going to go after these people. And they have actually received over 100,000 tips, not electronic tips, or people have called, and funny enough, the FBI saying that some of these tips are coming from very own family members or friends who saw these people on TV.
That's crazy.
So that was just the start of our year. We had rioters, break into our Capitol to protest things that they thought were right in their minds. And fast forward a couple of days later,
literally 1 week after the Capitol siege, our now former president Donald Trump is impeached for the second time, exactly a week before his term was due to expire. And just a quick recap, Trump's impeachment by the House of Representatives came after his attempts to overturn the 2020 U.S. presidential election. The adopted article of, quote, incitement of insurrection was cited in his January 2nd phone call with the Georgia Secretary of State, and alleged that Trump incited the riots on January 6th. Basically after pushing the baseless voter fraud conspiracies around the 2020 election, and the trials are now set to begin on February 8th.
Nays are 197. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the...
And unlike his last impeachment, 10 House Republicans actually voted to impeach him. Unlike the first time around, no Republicans had voted to impeach him. So it was quite a statement by the president's own party.
So, just to make sure everyone kind of understands, impeachment does not necessarily mean removal from office. Impeachment is a process. And even though Donald Trump is no longer president, the impeachment process will continue. And even though he is no longer sitting in office, what that means is that they can stop him from running for any office in the future. He can lose some of his presidential perks because once you're president, there is a whole law that gives you security detail, lots of money, and etc. So all of that can play out in the next few weeks. But a week after our president got impeached, we got a new president. And that's what we're here to talk about today. The good, the bad, the great of President Biden's inauguration. And of course, the historic notion that we have our first female VP, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris.
I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I just want to say that as a woman, that just makes me so proud. I think as a minority as well, it's amazing and also kind of sad in the sense that, wow, it took us this long to have such a high position, political position in power. But nonetheless, I'm excited for what the future holds in terms of what women can do in the House. No pun intended.
I think it's great too, like no matter your politics, like it's interesting how many barriers she broke with one election being the first female VP, the first Black woman, the first South Asian, the first HBCU grad, and she's a sister of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Inc., which, if you all didn't know, the three of us, Manny, Danny, and I, are multicultural Greeks. So we feel we have a special nod to Greeks who do great things in our government because it's not easy. We know the humble beginnings you often start from and the leadership skills you gain in your organizations. And we know Kamala's taken it to the top. So shout out to the AKAs. Y'all deserve it.
I know the AKA sorors are gonna be raving that they literally have a sister as vice president, which is pretty cool. I just want to chime in and say that it definitely, the moment was really impactful, and I think it made it even more impactful because she was being sworn in by Associate Justice Sonia Sotomayor, which is the first woman of color and first Latina to serve on the Supreme Court. So it was just a lot of moments of first. It was like this first Hispanic woman swearing in this, first Black woman, and it was pretty powerful.
Definitely breaking barriers.
I actually have a fun fact for you all that it's a fun fact about me because, I'm the center of the universe right now. But while I was at UF, I did a lot of organizational events for the Hispanic Student Association. So I actually wrote Sonia Sotomayor to ask her to come to an event or to at least do a webinar or something.
Oh, that's so cool.
But I was rejected. It's the best rejection letter.
For you.
She was. She actually said if it was any other day, but she had a hearing. So she couldn't.
Wow.
She had a case to attend to, so she couldn't speak either at UF or send a video. Whatever. Point is,
that's amazing though.
Best rejection letter I've ever received. It was great. UF has it. They didn't let me keep it, but I loved it. I was so happy for it.
Who knew there was a positive to rejection letters?
Well, speaking about, Latinos at the inauguration, I want to bring up the hot topic. I want to bring up the hot pocket. I want to
Polly Pocket.
It was a cold day, Manny.
It was no. I want to bring in the hot take of the episode. I'm gonna make a little sound effect that's gonna go hot take of the episode. So today's hot take, ladies and gentlemen, is Jennifer Lopez, and she was brought on to. I feel blessed that this Latina woman came here to represent all Latinos across, the nation. I thought that was pretty powerful. I'm going to preface, though, by saying that I don't think Jennifer Lopez is a great vocalist. I think she's,
agreed,
kind of good. She's okay. I was listening when I was listening to Lady Gaga, I was getting goosebumps. I was listening to Jennifer Lopez, and I was like,
You can't
Gaga
compare
has
Jennifer
though.
Lopez.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's-
you definitely cannot compare, but I do think that you're right in the sense that I did personally feel some sort of pride because
Right.
of the representation
Right.
and just the fact that she sang part of that song in Spanish. I was like, ooh,
She sang "This Land Is Your Land" and then "America the Beautiful," and in between, she said, and I didn't realize that she was reciting part of the Pledge of Allegiance in Spanish.
Una nación bajo Dios indivisible con libertad y justicia para todos.
Now for the hot take, because it was a hot debate with the people in my apartment. And she said,
Let's get loud.
after her Spanish quote. And some people felt she interjected too much of her music or herself in it. And it was just like, why would J-Lo do that? And people on Twitter were mad.
Okay.
Question. What did you guys think about it? Were you bothered by it?
Let me pull up to the mic. Hold up. So, first of all, let me preface this. I'm not a huge J-Lo fan. I think J-Lo's been around a really long time. I respect Jenny from the block, but I really do think that we could have like the new generation J-Lo. I can't put my finger on who that could be, but like, why has she been?
There isn't one. I'm sorry to cut you. There isn't one.
What about like Ariana Grande, for example?
But she's not really
like, Camila
Hispanic.
Cabello?
No, like they don't live up to the I think J-Lo is so present because she's so iconic, and like when people need to find
I guess. What about
Hispanic
Shakira?
artists, but that's the thing. Shakira isn't popular in English music. But anyway, I digress.
No.
My
You
point
have.
is-
I agree with you, Gabby. I agree
No,
with
but
you.
my point, because I had 3 points to make, I'm not going to belabor this hot take. So she is the icon. They always lean to her and go to her when they need Hispanic representation and an entertainer because she speaks perfect English. A lot of her music is in English, so it's very easy for her to relate to Latinx Americans, and Americans recognize who she is. So that's why she's called upon for like the Super Bowl and the inauguration, largely American events. Second, Let's Get Loud. Yes, I agree. She interjected that. Super unnecessary. But if you saw her at the Super Bowl when she sang that song, and the whole point was saying that Latinos need to get loud, and if you've heard her messages or interviews afterward, it's saying that now we have our voice, we are being more represented, we are at the table more often, we need to be louder. It's not just about being present, it's about making our presence known. So that was a nod to a lot of her messaging. And because she was also at the Super Bowl and had the Puerto Rican flag with the American flag in her part of her outfit, where she also wore white, and also for the inauguration, she wore white. So I'm just pointing those things out. Symbolism, it's a thing. Look it up. J-Lo, cool that she was there. I understand why she was there. Do I think a Shakira, like if we had to do a repeat, I would have preferred Shakira low key. I think they could have found someone else.
Same.
But in the evening, they had like Ozuna, Luis Fonsi, like surrogates. Well, I say they were surrogates here in Florida for Biden and in Puerto Rico. So I felt like they probably could have picked them, but the American public just wouldn't. When Bad Bunny was on stage for the Super Bowl, people were like, who was that? So I understand why they picked J-Lo. I get it. I understand.
I'm going to let Danny go before I go back to you, Gabby.
I don't even know what I was going to say, to be honest. I agree with everything that Gabby said pretty much. Like, I was surprised that they chose her, but not at the same time. Like, I could see why, because I think she represents, like, the Latina that was raised and born in the United States, like so many of us. But at the same time, I don't know if she embodies the Hispanic representation as a whole, if that makes sense. And the whole loud aspect, like, I didn't see a big deal about it because every Hispanic I know is hella loud. So she didn't say anything new. And I am all for representation and having our voices heard.
So, Gabby, I here's my argument. And Danny, I think she is really the only. Think of another Latina who is a top artist in her rank.
No,
it doesn't exist.
1,000%. Like American though, American.
Well, who would you invite? I don't think Shakira's in that. Shakira's good, But like you said, it's not the same outreach that J-Lo has. J-Lo is, unfortunately, we hate to admit it, she is that one Latina who has made it. You know, she's not the best singer, but she represents us, you know?
And
I think
she
that-
also publicly supported Biden. So I just wanted to point out that anyone who played as a surrogate, did any ads for him, including Lady Gaga, because she pushed for a lot of LGBTQ plus legislation and did ads with him. All of those many of them rather, were represented at the inauguration, and they all had small political ties.
Yes.
I think that it's not her time yet, but I think that if this would have happened in a few years, I think Rosalia could have definitely been the representation. I think in the near future, I think she's getting more well known. Like,
I think
more
she's on the
recognition.
come up, but I think with the biggest issue is that America as a country, there's still a divide between Latinx culture, and that division has been like more deeply embedded because of recent events. So I feel like we could have had someone new by this point if it weren't for some divisive messaging and narratives going around in the community that separated us from Americans, you can say. But now with the messaging that the Biden administration is bringing with unity and such, I do foresee more cross-culture, like crossover music happening and it being more public. Because right now there's a lot of Hispanic artists hopping on English songs. I was very surprised to see that on my Spotify. I was like, oh, I'm here for this. So maybe in the future, I don't personally think Rosalia too, but I could see how J-Lo may have to retire for good relatively soon.
And
I just don't know I don't see anyone right now, to be honest with you, on the horizon who's matching her level. And I feel like I don't know. I just don't see it, to be honest with you. I think she's the best. Who else would you have guys invited if it wasn't J-Lo?
The inauguration? I don't like, I
To
feel,
sing.
Oh, to sing. But like
Instead of
Spanish,
J-Lo.
like a Hispanic artist, is that who you're talking about?
Yes.
Oh, no, I completely agree with you. But what I was going to say is that a person who I believe is incredibly talented and super underappreciated, Miss Michelle Obama, like great speaker, awesome person, great to see her at the inauguration. And I just want to say, out of all the outfits, because it was a cold day, the fashion that
she
day.
looked amazing. And I just think it's ironic that people judged the way she used to dress, like during her time in office. I don't know if you guys remember that, but people would specifically point out the way she dressed.
Oh, yeah,
and
so rude.
Coming back fierce. Love it.
I'm the first person, like, as a feminist to be like, it's not always what they wear, but I was super impressed. Like, even Joe Biden, like the teal and sparkles, it was a Ralph Lauren fit. I was here for it. And this is why I was surprised, because I was just actually bragging to my fiance that I'm like, all women wear white to these things. Like every big political event, like Hillary Clinton wore white when she was a Democratic nominee. Like Sarah Palin wore white. Like everyone wears white. It is a female politician thing. First lady always wearing white. Kamala Harris wore ivory when she spoke in Delaware, which I was like, all right, nice nod, still white, but whatever. So I'm like, who's going to wear white? Only J-Lo. I was impressed. Everyone came out with the bold colors. And I was like, wow, this is very diverse, winky face fashion sense we got here. I appreciate it.
Definitely.
On that note, I want to mention really quickly that Biden's cabinet is now the most diverse in U.S. history. And wow, that's amazing.
Talking about diversity, I want to mention the poet that spoke at the inauguration. I thought it was awesome.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible.
I will say that I thought poets were a norm at inaugurations, but it turns out that only 3 other presidents have had poets at their inaugurations: Obama, Clinton, and Kennedy. Yeah. So I really thought her messaging was awesome. I'm so glad they brought her to, do this woman of color to, one of my favorite lines from her poem was,
"We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president only to find herself reciting for one."
Like, that was deep.
Wow. She's only 22 years old. I just want to point that out. She's fairly young. I read somewhere that she said that when she was invited to come recite this poem, she didn't know how to, like, where to even begin. And I think it was like the day after the Capitol riots, she was up all night, and that's all she could think about, and that's when she started writing. Pretty cool story.
And
So,
fun fact, she also... Oh, sorry, Gabby, go ahead.
go on. You can finish
You
your
good?
fun fact. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna... I was gonna mention that she also used to have, or still has, she had a speech impediment, just like Biden. So Biden had a stutter, and she had a difficulty pronouncing certain words, and that's what was one of the reasons why she was drawn to poetry at such a young age. So definitely a lot of obstacles that she overcame to get to where she is. So kudos to her and her legacy.
Her name, let's put some respect on it, is Amanda Gorman.
That's right. I'm sorry.
And yes, she is 22 years old, but she's the first youth poet laureate. I kept hearing about it in the coverage, and I'm like, no, we have poet laureates every year. Like, so that, why do they keep saying the first? Like, what is she the first of? And it's youth poet laureate, which I'm like, oh, at 22, that's like not much younger than I am. And it amazes me, because I feel like if you tell someone that you're an English major, like, people joke like, well, you're going to be broke. And look at this. Like, her mom was an English teacher, which is how she fell in love with poetry. And Gorman, like, wasn't particularly great at performing poetry. She was not great at spoken word, but she turned her writing into an art form and was able to share it with everyone. And I think she was a great orator. I was very impressed for someone to actually have difficulty with speaking, and who did have like a speech impediment in the beginning. But again, I looked her up because I was very intrigued to know about her history, and she drew a lot of inspiration from Maya Angelou, who was mute for a small portion of her life. And it just goes to show that, I don't know, every which way, like, you looked at this inauguration, it just showed that with a little hard work and with the feeling of empowerment, you can make mountains. Like, you could be the hill that people are trying to reach, the peak that they want to go up to. And I was just very impressed with Amanda, seeing like one of the youngest people probably at the inauguration being able to make history like that. The first youth poet laureate, and probably the first one to ever speak at an inauguration. And as Manny said, it's not common to have poetry to begin with. And I think her poem in particular, if you didn't have a chance to hear it, really wraps everything up. So speaking of wrapping things up, as we mentioned in more ways than one, like, everyone was anticipating this, I guess you can say, administration, because we just didn't know how things were going to shake out for a while. But honestly, as Kamala Harris, her first tweet as VP was, she was ready to serve. That's exactly what she wrote. And Biden mentioned as well that he was ready to get to work. So what did that mean? We already knew for his first 100 days what exactly he was looking to do. They haven't revealed all of the details. And if you get to watch a White House briefing, it's very refreshing to watch them now, because like now reporters laugh and they joke and they banter. So it's not as boring as they used to be, or as hostile. But anyway.
I just want to point out that Manny, Gabby, and I are all journalists. So we always tend to look at politics and news-oriented phenomena with the eyes of a journalist. So there's that.
Yes, and when you're a producer like me, you have to cut a lot of sound bites, and when they don't do Q&As, it gets really hard. So one of the major questions we have is, what is Biden going to do with his first 100 days? We don't really know, but he spent his first day in the Oval Office undoing a lot of what the previous president did. So,
which was expected.
Yeah, I mean, most people were going to do that anyway, or not most people, but most presidents do use that power in office to push a certain agenda. But he sat down, and just to name a few of his executive orders, he lifted the Muslim travel ban, which, if you remember, has been around for a few years already, rejoined the World Health Organization. So if you didn't know, during the pandemic, we were not part of the WHO, which as a major country, kind of shocking and made it difficult to do some vaccine planning. And then rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement. So if you believe in climate change and think that the nation needs to do more about it, this was the first step in that direction, according to Biden. And he signed an executive order stopping construction at the border wall, so the United States will no longer be funding that project. So I guess other things to look forward to is Biden kept saying it, 100 million vaccines in his first 100 days, technically doable. what he's done in order to make sure that happens is that he invoked this Defense Production Act to ramp up vaccine production and then signed a dozen other orders to increase the number of vaccines available and the people who can administer them. So basically removing some red tape that might make it hard to deliver it to people and giving more people authority to administer them. I'm not sure where pharmacists land on that, but that was one of his goals, is that you can get the same way a pharmacist can give you a flu shot, they should be able to give you the vaccine. So all of that is great, but there's a little problem. He can't just sign executive orders for everything.
Even though Democrats control both branches of government, the legislative and the executive, Biden will still have to do work in order to get any legislation passed, even though he does have a simple majority in both chambers. He will still have to court the spectrum of all Democrats within his party, and he will probably, as a senator for decades, and not being a stranger to Senate chambers, he will be including bipartisan legislation in his administration, and hopefully we can see we can go back to some bipartisan politics. We've been seeing a lot of polarization these past few decades, and hopefully Biden can change that. I think that's hopeful, but I can only wish.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to really depend what some of the topics are, and things that I'm personally watching out for is he's already introduced an immigration reform package, so it provides a path for citizenship for immigrants who were brought to the U.S. illegally and
undocumented.
Brought to the U.S. illegally. So for all undocumented immigrants, it's not just for DACA students per se as well. Like, I do want to clarify, like, not everyone who is undocumented is DACA, because that is correct. A myth. Anyway, he signed an executive order to protect DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, but he's also looking for other ways to provide a path for residency and citizenship for anyone who may not have any paperwork to be here or any way to get out of that situation. But included in that package is increased border security. He wants to do it with technology as opposed to a physical wall. So he wants to invest in more in that. So who knows what's going to happen with ICE or deportation. So I know a lot of people are keeping a critical eye on that. And there's, hopes that he can pass this COVID package, which is like almost $2 billion. And it's going to be hopefully $1,400 per person.
Trillion. It was almost $2 trillion.
$2 trillion. Wow. Yeah. Thanks for correcting me. Because that's a lot of money. But when asked why is it that much, it's just because they spoke with economists. It could thin out. It could possibly be more in the future, depending on what people need and what they hope to help with in terms of the economy. Small businesses are in there too. It's not just the average American, but those are some pretty expensive packages already making their way that are kind of ruffling some feathers.
Gabby, you mentioned ICE, and I wanted to mention really quickly that I know that part of his immigration plans is to increase government supervision over U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is ICE. He also plans to raise the refugee cap that Trump set at 15,000 people to 125,000 people. So I'm sure that's going to cause some controversy as well.
Looking forward, 2021, we have a lot of optimism going into this year. Hopefully we end the year with all of us getting vaccinated, hopefully, or even being able to get back to work, and having a little sense of normalcy as the year goes on. The Biden administration has a lot of issues to tackle, not only the ones from the pandemic now with the crumbling economy, loss of jobs, high unemployment.
Well, this is all just negative stuff you're spewing out.
And I mean, it's the reality. I think it's the reality we live in. But, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
It's only January.
I mean, a lot has happened, but it is only January. A lot can still happen. And I think we remain hopeful for the months to come and whatever 2021 2021 may have in store for us, whether that be...
Oh yeah, it's been a year already. Like, no, don't jinx us by saying stuff. Don't jinx us.
Remember those UFOs we talked about on our last...
Oh my gosh, no, we're gonna know if they're UFOs this year.
We're having more UFO sightings this year. I'm kidding.
Bueno, clearly we spoke a lot of politics today. We just wanted to catch you up to speed. But if you're tired of the politics, you're tired of the know-how, don't worry. Whatever makes headlines is probably what you need to know. You can always say, oh yeah, have you seen this Bernie meme? Just to laugh it off.
Let's get loud.
Bye.
Stop.
Me fui.